Good afternoon. My name is Daniela Tršová. I'm a business development manager at CTO Masaryk University in Brno. And I would like to welcome you to today's live after PhD, also known as Career Cafe Live. This is an event organized since 2018 that aims to present people with PhD degrees who took their career paths. It's a great opportunity mainly for young researchers to meet inspiring speakers, listen to their stories, and ask career-related questions. We invite speakers not only from academia, but from the private sector as well. We organize these lectures in cooperation with the Twinning project partners, so it is my great pleasure to welcome also participants outside CTO MU. All of you are more than welcome to place questions to our guest. You can do it via chat or raise your hand and ask directly. I would like to ask you to switch on your cameras if possible, so that the speaker can see your faces. Today's lecture will be moderated by Ester Žarur, the communications leader from CTO Masaryk University, who will introduce our speaker, Rastislav Horos. Hello, Esther. Please tell us a few words about our guest.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to see so many of you at this event. And as Daniela already pointed out, this is an interactive event, and we really hope that we will be able to talk to real people and not only to the blank screen with the black background and names on it. So I would be very happy if you could turn on your cameras. And I will not waste too much time on introducing Rastislav. I will just tell you a few words about him. And I hope also that my moderation will not be needed. And I hope that it will be basically a lively interaction between you and him, because this is an excellent opportunity to learn about a very interesting career path of someone who was once a PhD student and who was once a postdoc, just like you, the people in the audience. And he will share with us his career transitions, obstacle he had to encounter, and also the interesting path into the industry that surprisingly for him turned out much happier as he was thinking at the beginning. So Rastislav is a molecular biologist, and he's currently Chief Technology Officer at the Hummingbird Diagnostics in Germany. Before that, he was working as a postdoc at EMBL, and originally, he comes from Slovakia. I will not spend too much time, as I said, on his introduction of his profession, because he will do this himself. And he will tell you something about his educational journey, about the time when he was doing his PhD, then the EMBL time as a postdoc, and the path to the dark side, as he was calling it, dark side, obviously in brackets, because this will be all about showing you that industry is not as scary as it looks like, and it can be maybe exactly the place where your career will be also heading, and you might enjoy it. So I will now hand the word to Rastislav, and after his presentation, I hope we will have a lively discussion where you are free to ask any career-related questions or RNA-related questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther, and thank you very much, Daniela. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this event. I don't feel myself as being the prime example of how a scientific career should go, but I think if I just share a few tips from my side to you, maybe that will be useful. So let's see. And also thank to the CTO development department that essentially gave me this opportunity. I have prepared a little presentation about my career, which is one of the most difficult presentations to make in my life, because if I have to make a scientific presentation, that's super easy. So preparing a presentation about myself, it's something like, feels really strange, but I hope I put all the relevant information in there. So the short CV, as Esther already said, I am originally from Slovakia, trained as a veterinary doctor, but never stayed in stables. Essentially, really liked it in the lab.
Do you try to put a full screen view? Can you try?
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Yes, PhD in molecular hematology, Rotterdam, then a postdoc at EMBL, where I also did a 4-year staff scientist. But let's start at the beginning. So I think one of the questions would be what interested me in science. And, you know, I spent my childhood still in the time when it was behind the Iron Curtain. So in communist time, one of the prime examples of a career was the career of astronauts, or cosmonauts as they are called. And that got me really into space and space rockets. And I guess almost every second boy wanted to be a cosmonaut back then. But that stayed with me, and I decided that I want to study, you know, physics, cosmology, or astronomy, etc. Yet, you know, for familiar reasons, I couldn't really go to Bratislava and study university, Komenský University, where the astronomy was taught at that time. So I was staying in my hometown, and I sent applications to few universities, and I got accepted to chemistry and to veterinary medicine. So, you know, medicine is still sounds a little bit better than chemistry. So I decided that I will go to veterinary medicine. And I think that was a good decision, especially in the preclinical topics. So I really started to love microbiology, immunology, genetics, and molecular biology. Although, you know, molecular biology was the only topic which I had to repeat in my third semester. But, you know, ironically, that's what I'm doing now. Anyway, most exciting, or something what really got me interested, was back then it was still around late 90s and early 2000s, was the famous mad cow diseases. Maybe many of you may not heard of it anymore, but back then it was a disease that was spreading in UK. And it was very interesting because the infectious agent essentially in the mad cow disease is a protein, right? There is no DNA, there's no RNA, it's just a misfolded protein which can get you infected and even kill. And that was something what really got me interested into how exactly science works. And also I essentially connected to a professor at immunology where they were studying back then this disease in Scrapia, so in goats. And yeah, I got to the lab and pretty much stayed in the lab since. And that was even strengthened by Erasmus exchange program. So I went to Portugal, to Villarreal. I was doing something else. I was doing cytogenetics, so a lot of microscopy, fluorescent microscopy. But then I saw, you know, how much different can a lab be equipped. I compared it to the lab back in early 2000 in Slovakia and to Portugal in 2000, and that was a really big difference. So you can imagine that to Western laboratories, that would be even more. So yeah, I got myself already quite convinced that the science is something what I want to do back then. And I decided that I will do PhD. So why? As I said, because I wanted to learn more deeply about every facet of a molecular biology that I could. So I was, you know, trying to apply for a PhD, and very logically to Vienna, because it's very close to Slovakia. I could keep my familial ties, and that would be also very practical, right? So I didn't really apply as per project focus. It was really like just per lab. And I applied at Vienna Biocenter. I was there for interview, but didn't get a position. But I got a position at IMP Vienna. Maybe you know that institute. But just about when I was to start at IMP Vienna, unfortunately, the professor back then was diagnosed with cancer. And then he was very uncomfortable to take any new PhD students back then. So I got transferred kind of to the best collaborator of that professor, to Erasmus MC in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. So that was a kind of a strange way how things can turn. But in the end, I was super happy about this, because Rotterdam, the Netherlands in general, and also the lab where I was working at Erasmus MC is something what I got to love very much. So, you know, I got my diploma, meaning I got my, you know, veterinary medicine diploma on a Friday pretty much. And on Monday, I was already at the first day in the lab in the Netherlands. So I had like 2 days to, you know, have some free time after my veterinary medicine school. And I ended up in experimental hematology group, in experimental hematology department in the group of Marieke van Linden. And what we were doing there was to study gene expression control in erythropoiesis, and more specifically how translation regulation is essentially controlling early and late erythropoietic development. And that was a lot of RNA biochemistry, as it turned out later on. And we were also doing a lot with ribosomes and studying so-called ribosomal deficiencies. So these are really conditions where, you know, patients have mutations in ribosomal proteins. So Oh, I forgot to say that you can just ask questions as I go, but I think there's no questions as of now. So my PhD, I can summarize on this pie chart time, which was pretty much the 2/3 of the time of this 4.5 years was that I was really thinking what I'm doing there. So that was a really steep learning curve, which I really had to go through. And then towards the end, I kind of realized what is important and what I have to do. And the real productive time for me was the last 6 months of my 4.5 years of PhD. So that was where I did the right experiment at the right time with the right controls. That's very important. And also wrote the papers and could send out the papers, etc. So what I liked very much about my PhD there was my boss, so Marike, and the team we had there and the department, so all the people that were in the department. And I also liked very much everything what you can learn, right? So that is an incredible amount of experience and new things what you can learn there. So what I disliked essentially was very early on the project, because I kind of inherited the project from a previous postdoc that left there, and quickly I realized I can't reproduce the data what that person was producing back then, right? So at one point I have to develop my own project, but while developing my own project, I realized that there is just too much that one can learn. So you have to be very selective very early on, because otherwise you get lost in impossible experiments and setup which you don't want. So the lessons which I learned: reproduce what others claim, right? So if you read a paper, that's very nice, but does it really work in the way if you are trying to reproduce this? It's something what we are fighting also with here in the industry, that pretty much most of the things which are out there and are coming and being published, it's often very hard to reproduce. So I also learned that the collaborations are great, and you strengthen your network. But in the end, what counts is the time that you invest in your own PhD. So you have to balance that a lot. Do the necessary minimum for experiments, but be crazy about the controls. Just learn one thing per experiment. Don't try to learn about 10 things or try to solve the whole hypothesis in one experiment, but do that as you go consecutively. Have others reproduce what you claim or what you have experimented. So that's also very important. I really like the time when the PhD, so as a PhD student, we also had other students to teach, for example, bachelor students. And I was very happy if a bachelor student could, for example, reproduce my own experiments, because that would mean that they are also robust. Please learn statistics, even basic statistics if you can, because that helps you to design your experiments, and eventually develop your own thinking. And this is something what, developing my own thinking was something what I was also kind of going and doing on my postdoc time. So yeah, these 4.5 years at PhD was something what was very demanding, but I also enjoyed very, very much. And I could shade my own personality in scientific thinking, and I don't regret any time or any month or any week which I spent on it. But whether I would do things differently now, maybe, but if I didn't do things as I did it back then I wouldn't be here. And I also have in my title 2013. Well, that was a thing. At our department, the PhD students were mostly medical students, so they were doing MD studies at the same time PhD studies. That was a specialty there, and those medical students, they pretty much had several, up to 10 papers by the time they were finishing their PhDs, because they could do simple cohorts divisions or whatever from the data they were getting from the clinical departments, and voila, they could produce a paper, right? So me as an experimental biologist, that was very difficult. So I could only reach the limit 2 papers published by 2013, when the committee from the Erasmus MC has said, okay, now you can defend your PhD. So pretty much I was done by the end of 2010, but I could only defend in 2013 when the papers were published. So at the end of 2010, I told myself I'll just try my luck and apply at the top RNA biochemistry lab in Europe, one of the tops in Europe, and that was in Heidelberg. And and I said, okay, I'll just write an email to the Matthias Hense there, and after what he replies, then maybe then I would just only start with the serious applications and look around. But lucky enough, I got a position right after this one email and one interview, and that was pretty good because I have jumped on a running train. So they were really looking for someone with a very similar background back then, but of course the position was not written on the internet, or it was not announced anywhere. It was just thinking of Matthias, that he was looking for someone like that. So I really, it was a really guess or a really lucky pick from my side to apply there. So maybe some of you already experienced the MBL. That's an excellent scientific environment. It's pretty much, sometimes you feel that there are no budget limits, and the collaborations there are really open and something what is really getting you forward. So after this 4 years as a postdoc and 4 years as a staff scientist, I could, got some reasonable publication record. So I decided, okay, now is the time to have your own group, and had to, academic position as a group leader or as a PI or junior professor or whatever you want to call it. So I had my big paper accepted, and I started to search for those positions. And, this took me pretty much 1 year, and I sent out 25 applications, and I interviewed in 3 places here in Germany. So 2 universities and one, big research institute in Germany. But I didn't get any offer. And, after a year of looking, I wasn't really motivated to do that further. So I decided, okay, I will also try the industry. And I applied at 4 companies. And there I got interviews within 2 to 4 weeks after I sent out the applications. So I have interviewed at one big size pharma company, and, but there was no offer, or I never heard back from them. I've also interviewed at medium-sized company. So I first just really talked with the hiring manager or a person who was hiring, and that person, we really got ourselves to understand very good, and I was thinking that, well, the job might be even safe, and that person even told me how to how to tickle the application and how to set the salary expectation, etc., which I pretty much did. And then I was kicked out by HR manager because my salary expectations were obviously too high. So yeah, that was a lesson learned again. And then I applied to 2 small size companies, which again, I had interviews within 1 week or something, and from both I got offers. And eventually I decided to take a job at Hummingbird Diagnostics, where I'm until now. And just to put you a time scale for that, it took me 19 days pretty much from sending out the application to receiving the work contract. So this can go pretty much faster than 1 year of 25 applications which I had in academia. Okay, so my role at Hummingbird, I am now currently a chief technology officer. We have a team of 7 people in the lab, which are 3 PhD level and 2 master level. There's also 1 lab operation manager, and we usually have 1 to 3 students, either bachelor or master students. So I'm a part of a management of the company, but I still have very active roles in the lab. So I do protocol development and often also execution when we do it for the first time. I do lab management, the product development itself, because obviously we as a diagnostic company head for developing a product. And we also have ISO certification system in place, so I'm also involved in a lot of quality management. I'm a contact for clinical material when we are getting these, and I even organize a science club. It's some kind of a journal club, but we do that internally, so everyone presents about their positions, their roles, and in this way, everyone can learn a lot about what the others are doing. So my typical division of time, if you are interested, is about 20% are just meetings, either with the lab or with others from the management, or one-on-one meetings, and 20% is really just devoted to the lab. So discussion about the experiments, planning these experiments, and then reviewing the data, and then trying to transfer the data to the data science team, etc. So 40% of my time, I really learn biology and science. So I just read articles and discuss with others, with our chief scientific officer, with data scientists, and we develop ideas or go to conferences. So this is, as you can see, the biggest chunk of my time, and it's something that I enjoy very much. There's still some paperwork that I have to do, mostly when we write some IPs, protocols, for then also SOPs and working instructions for ISO manuscripts, if you are putting out some hirings, etc. And 5% of my time is just administration, contact with vendors, HR, etc. So that's not so exciting. I also have some evening division of time, and it is usually when, when I have a quiet time at home after the kids are in the bed. I can also read articles and develop ideas, which I can do with a beer or something, and that's usually also very productive. But that doesn't happen every day. So what I enjoy here at Hummingbird or small biotech is people. I guess our boss has this really good policy of not employing assholes here. So it's a really nice crowd of people, and we all work towards the same goal. I really much like the freedom to think and the discussions that we all do, and also the pretty much flat hierarchy. This is probably because we are a very small biotech. We are 25 or something people. There is no need to work on the weekend or evening unless I want. And I also don't need to write too many grants or proposals or something. So that's also saving a lot of time. And that's pretty much very different to academic PI position. So I have ability to steer many decisions and learn how this works. And I'm also learning a lot about the diagnostics themselves, clinical studies, business meetings, negotiations, and communication. So this is something where it's really a learning almost every day for me. I have the last slide, and that is just personal tips. I really think they're personal because it's something what we evaluate here at the company, and it's also something what helped me. So first thing what I would say is be super fast applying. So if you see a position open, then just apply. Don't wait or don't contemplate too long, because at least I know that it runs at our company and many other companies. We review those applications pretty much on a daily basis. So, and as soon as we have a really good candidate, we immediately invite and discuss. And we don't wait until we have 3 or 5 potential candidates and do some big discussion rounds. No. So if I can recommend and do fast applications. Then most helpful is always one-page CV, and where you really highlight your skills. And those that are relevant, you really put on top. And those that are non-relevant, you also highlight somewhere. Maybe, you don't think this is important, but you never know what is being planned in the company. And often you have things or you have areas where the company is going to develop, but it's nowhere to learn. So it's important that you steal all your skills, or that you list all your skills. But please don't list skills that you are kind of, a course on something, or you're just a beginner or something. This is, you really don't need to lose space in your CV on that. So I would say you don't need to put extensive publication list if you have one. Just list top 3 or something and provide an ORCID link or something like PubMed link. Also, you don't need to put where you have been for conferences or any references. If we would need any reference, we would ask for that. And if you are from a non-European country, it's very important that you that you kind of put a clear statement about your work permit, right? Because that's also something that sometimes, unfortunately, as it is, people are kind of also taking very much into consideration. So set salary expectations range wide. You can always negotiate the exact, salary later. But that's what happened to me. If you set it a little bit too high, the threshold below, if it's a certain threshold, then an HR person will kick you out. And usually HR person have no information or doesn't really know what the hiring manager wants. And they just look at these very metrics and then you are out. And also, if possible, try to quantify your achievements somehow in your CVs, in whatever way you can. Like I said, I have, I don't know, three papers, or I have helped at 5 projects which achieved this and that, and something what is something what we can essentially, or your hiring manager can compare to some other candidate. So that is also very helpful. I have 2 more slides about our company. If you are interested, I'll just run quickly through. We are a small biotech, 25 people. We are doing liquid biopsy for both lung cancer screening and therapy decision making in late-stage lung cancer. And we based our, we developed our product based on a small RNA, which we detect in peripheral blood. And we have currently 2 or 3 very promising product developments, which we want to bring to a market. One we already did an FDA breakthrough device application, and the other one we are trying to get a what is called a medicinal active for IVDR. So this is something that's, it's a good time to get into our company, and we always have from time to time positions open as well. So check out our website. And what we also do is, as I said, we always take master students or bachelor students, but I guess most of you are already PhD students, so that's probably not the best audience for this. Okay, I think I'm through with my presentation.
Thank you so much for this great beginning that will definitely generate a lot of questions. And I am very happy to see that we already have first few questions. Yeah. So Ishita would like to ask, what skills from the PhD helped you in industry?
So, I mean, as you just saw, I went first to PhD. I finished my PhD in 2010, and then I had another 9 years when I was a postdoc and a staff scientist. So I can't really say whether, it's only exclusively PhD skill, but something what really helped me is to show that you can think independently yourself. And this synthetic thinking is something what helped me to also produce in the end my papers, and it was also something what was appreciated pretty much by a hiring manager or my current boss and my colleagues here at Hummingbird. So yeah, it's kind of a way of independent thinking. That is, I think, the top skill which I would highlight.
Well, I would expand a little bit on her question because it's related to it. Because obviously, if you take a role as a CTO and you have said that you spend also some time in meetings and negotiations, obviously you should have some developed leadership skills because you have people in your team. So during your postdoc time, for example, have you taken any specific career development courses, soft skill courses that would help you later on when you enter the career in the industry?
Well, honestly, no, I didn't take too many of these courses because I wasn't really thinking that I would go to industry eventually. And, here in companies, sometimes we say that when people leave, they don't leave the companies, they leave the managers or they leave the bosses. So I guess at one point you also have to be kind of a kind person to your own team. And I don't know how I would explain it, or how I would give any recommendation on that. But I think you always have to come with the utmost respect to every single person in the team and in the company. And I think with this respect, you also have to treat any future employee or any person you meet at interviews, etc. So you only earn respect if you respect the others. That's what I would say, and that's what helped me at least a lot.
Thank you. That's definitely a solid basis and really nice answer. Now there is a second question from Ishita again, and she really liked your tips about the CV, but she would like to ask what kind of tips will you give when writing and submitting a cover letter for an industry position?
So that's a good point. Cover letters, if I have to be honest, we read, but not in a full depth. So I would not spend more than a half a page on a cover letter, and I would just highlight probably the most important points from your CV on that. And I know that many companies really do like you to explain why would you choose this or that company. But at least for us, and I have been involved in several hirings here at our company, you apply for a company because you need a job. So I don't need to first read 10 sentences about how you are genuinely interested in doing this or that, because what's most important is that you are most qualified person for it. So that is maybe a tip, and keep the cover letter maybe to half a page at most. Most important is the CV.
Okay, so you would basically say short, concise, and sell
Yes.
yourself looking at the needs of the company.
Yeah. So
Okay.
highlight the skills. I mean, essentially, we hire based on skills. You know, and the second layer comes when the person comes for interview, then the person also has to click personally with us, right? But the most important is the skills.
Thanks a lot. I think this was sufficient for Ishia. And now the next question or next comment is from Samuel. And he says, thank you for the talk. Not getting a position in academia, even as a first author of Cell paper. What do you think you could have done better, or what do you think you were lacking? Or is it mostly a matter of luck? I think he's speaking of about positions in academia now.
So I think there were several factors. So first factor was that I was getting old. I mean, you know, I'm now 40, and by the time I was trying to get such a position, I was 36 or something. And that's considered quite old if you want to be a junior PI. So I have had a great time at EMBL as a staff scientist, but that came with a cost. And that is that I stayed at a staff scientist position, which gave you additional 5 years of, space and time to produce data and papers and develop your thinking, etc. But at the same time, you lose essentially time in quite a competitive manner. Second point was that, and I think it's righteously so, that I was an older man, whereas what we see is that if you are a younger female, that's much better, because I think you as is being preferred, because we see that there is a lot of discrepancy or disbalance in gender at universities and research institutes, and I righteously think that one needs to balance for that. It's something what I have to just accept, and I don't have to fight it. And the third was a very specific way of research proposal which I was trying to do, or which, and research which I was trying to make. It was very much orientated on a basic biology, was kind of going very deep into some RNA biochemistry. And maybe that was just not the right time. I know, 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of people were looking at the big data, and they wanted to have projects which can have or generate as much data as possible in any kind of a manner. Now, after COVID, I guess people slowly but surely again turn to very basic biology again, and that's becoming a little bit more fashionable. But about 3 or 4 years ago, that, at least to my experience, that wasn't the case. So I guess I wasn't thinking big enough to get a position with as much omics as I could do. But that was something what didn't excite me back then, doesn't excite me even now.
Yeah, but I think this is pretty common, that postdocs are hesitating and often not really are being clear about where they are heading.
Yeah.
We have another question from Dimitri, and he's asking, what's the most...
Esther, sorry, just that Lucia's hand is a long time raised.
Sorry. Okay, we definitely give priority to people who are brave enough to ask in person. So, Lucia, it's your turn, please.
Thank you so much, ladies, and hello, Rusty. Many greetings from Vienna. So I have a more personal question, if you don't mind, because I know you as a very devoted and wonderful father of 3 little kids and a husband. And I often get asked how it is for a woman to be in science, and I usually answer that I don't think it's much easier for men than for women. So my question is, because life-work balance is such an important topic in science today, and you can really compare how it is in industry compared to academia. Yeah. Do you see a difference? You touched upon this a little bit, and I understood it that it's better in industry, and that's also what I hear quite often from people, that actually it does improve if you move to industry. Do you have the same experience? Can you confirm this? Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I already thank you, Lucia, for this great question. And we had a very good experience when I was at EMBL. Me and my colleagues, postdocs then, we seem to have quite so many, pregnancies or children around. At one point, our boss said, we may not be so productive as a lab, but we are very reproductive. And, that praised essentially careers of many of us. So he was very understanding, and he's very understanding for familiar reasons as a father of a few kids himself. And, I try to balance it as much as I can. But as you know, we scientists are a little bit specialty kind. And, if your partner and my partner or my wife is not a scientist, can essentially, they need to accept it a little bit more than if you would have any other job. So, my wife was very happy when I switched from academia to industry, because suddenly I had much more time. I even started to have time for hobbies, next to the family, which was unheard for me before that. And I can confirm that, I have much more free time than I had before in industry, even when going to the higher position that I am now. And I myself can essentially structure more time for myself, as I do now, essentially, as I put in the presentation. If I have time in the evening and I still have energy, then I do some work at home. So I would say this work-life balance has improved a lot for me.
Thank you.
Thank you too. So now we go back to the question of Dimitri that's related also to the hiring process. And he's asking, what's the most optimal way to demonstrate critical and/or independent thinking to HR and the hiring manager?
I'm not sure how you demonstrate it to an HR person. That's a good question. But I think it's always best if you can get in some way a contact to a hiring manager, and either via LinkedIn, or if you know someone at the company who works at a company, it's just that you get a casual chat with that person that is hiring. I think that's very important. And one or the other person would know someone at the company and where you are trying to apply. And if you can get that 10 minutes, I think that's very important. That's what helped me at least. Other than that, I'm not really sure. Small companies where I'm working, we don't really have an HR kind of filter or level that you need to talk to, or someone that you need to talk to. They, usually they filter applications which are not really fitting, and sometimes you have those spam applications. We can't avoid that. And but then pretty much all other applications are being forwarded to us and to me. For example, if we hire someone to the lab, then it's being directly forwarded to me. And then we evaluate it in a small circle with the CEO and with the CSO, and then we just contact these persons and invite for personal applications or for personal interviews, excuse me. And as I said, this can be really within few days after that person sent us the application per email typically. So this can happen very fast.
Thanks a lot. We have next question from Jana, who would like to know, does it matter where you have the PhD from? For example, if you have good publications, would your chances significantly differ if you did the PhD at a famous university versus a relatively unknown university?
I guess it's always the matter of I think it's the right time and the right place is something what matters the most. We wouldn't really look if someone comes here from this or that university, as for example, and I don't know how it is also for if academic institutions hire, how they work or how this works exactly. But I don't think that a no-name university would be something of a problem. I think in the end it boils down to to the output, scientific output of that person, and especially the skills. And the university wouldn't really play a role. At least for me, as a position here as a hiring manager at a small biotech company, it doesn't play a role.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. So we move to the next question, which was from Min. And the question is, may I know when you applied for academic positions, in which countries have you tried? Only in Germany and Austria? Because we found there are less open positions in academia and it's difficult to find a job, but industry would be easier.
So that's true. German and Austrian academic environment is a little bit special in that respect. And you have to build some kind of a relationship if you want to get to a university, to the faculty lead, etc., which I also tried, and I went for interviews. So, but I have been applying essentially across the whole Europe. So I didn't during this 1 year, pretty much everything from Ireland all the way down to Italy almost. So I have applied in many different countries to try to get a group lead position. Yeah, but it was primarily Germany and also many places in Austria, I also have to admit. If it's an industry job, that it would be easier to get in Germany and Austria, that's a good question. So all of those positions which I applied for, those 4 companies, they were all here in Germany. So I can only say about that. But in general, yeah, there is many positions, at least here in Heidelberg, in a technology park that we are where we are residing. There is many positions always opened, and many companies are hiring, I have a feeling, and you can always find some positions being out there. And I guess from that respect, it is definitely true that you find more positions open in industry than in academia, but it very much depends on what type of a position. What is essentially easy in industry is that you can get promoted very fast. So sometimes you have to take that step back, and if you think that you are better than that you don't apply, I don't know, for this or that position, but sometimes you just have to start at the lower position, although you think that's a little bit degradation for you, but it may turn essentially very quickly on the other way, and you may get promoted to a much higher position that you intended at the very beginning very fast. So that was also in my case. I have been essentially applying here, not really as a lab head, I was applying here as an assay developer, but after a few months I was already promoted to lab head because my boss saw that I can do much more than just doing a lab development or kind of assays development. And yeah, after 3 years now, I can also be part of a management. So this can go quite fast in a company, and don't be afraid to apply a little bit lower than you think that you are.
Thanks a lot. Here in between, I sense, like also from the questions, that people might be more inclined for staying in the academia. So I would now raise a hypothetical question, and I would like you to use those reactions and raise your hand. So the question is now, if you would be offered, this is for the audience, 2 positions, one would be in academia and one would be in industry. Which offer would you take? So please raise your hand if you would take the academia position. If you had those two offers, which one would you take? The academia? Raise your hand. Rather than the other one, I mean, you would prefer academia before industry. So far it's 2 people, 3 people. And try to be honest so we know. Yeah, so it's like getting more and more. So a lot of people would rather take the academia position. Now, I don't know whether I should assume that the rest would take the other one. So now put your hands down and raise the hand if you had 2 offers that you would choose the industry position. So if you had 2 offers, they would be same money-wise, who would take rather the industry? Okay, cool. This was interesting. It even seems that more people are open for industry jobs. Maybe it was after what Rastislav was telling us. So this is fantastic. This was very interesting. So now we will go further with the questions. So the story will develop. So now, does number of publications play a role? Is Ishita's question. I assume for a position in industry, whether a number of publications someone has plays a role.
I guess it's a number of top tier publications that really makes a difference rather than a total number of publications. So, you may even highlight only one very good paper, and that's already enough. And but the total number of publications wouldn't play a role for me, for example.
Thank you for the answer. We have another question from Ahmed, and he would like to know, when you apply for a position in industry, do you limit yourself to a certain lab or a project in a company, or do you keep your application open to any position in that company?
That's a good question, and because I have applied to a position for at least in this company, that's a relatively small company which has only one big lab. I wouldn't know how to answer that. But when I was applying to larger, medium-sized or larger companies, there was quite a lot of differentiation on skills what they required. So I'm not sure whether it is a very wise to essentially write that, you know, you have such a broad lab skills that you can go into GMP, into development, into packaging, whatever. I think I think it's most important to highlight the most important skills you have, and always highlight also those skills that don't really fit into the, you know, exact positions that you are applying for, because as I said, you never know what people plan in the company, and you know, it may be the other skills that you highlight that you think that are not relevant, which will be picked up and later.
Thanks a lot. Here, if I may, I would include one question that I have, and that is relevant to something what you were saying. In your presentation, you were saying that at the beginning you were applying for big companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, and somehow I had a feeling that you would have the preferences for the big ones. Now that you have experience with a small biotech company, and now you are, like, you know, more out there in the industry, would you like to explain us and tell us what could be the advantages and disadvantages of those three groups, and which one would you prefer now that you already have the experience?
Well, I have only a real experience in a small biotech, right? And I have summarized on one slide why I like it very much. And at least when I'm talking to my friends, which are at, you know, large size or medium size biotech companies, they, you know, they experience often that they are part of the whole, but not maybe completely essential one, and often that they cannot, you know, that they cannot have impact on any decision making, or they cannot really steer the way things are developing. And what is also sometimes frustrating for them is that quite strict hierarchical structures, and maybe that's again a German specialty, but yeah, I don't know whether it is that can be said about other countries. But essentially, at a small company, you have, you know, you pretty much know what everyone else is doing, and we are all going for the same goal, and we are all dependent on each other. In a bigger company, these tasks are getting diluted a lot, and you know, that can, as I heard, also lead to sometimes really chaos about you know, like departments not communicating with each other, and managers from different departments trying to get to the highest position on the back of the others, etc., etc. So I don't know. It really much probably depends on the company. But I can't say for any of the big companies, because I didn't really experience it myself. But I would recommend small biotech. You know, you always think like, oh my God, biotech is going to get busted in 1 year or something with no money. You know, that may be true, but you also have to take a little bit of risk on this. And as I said, in a small biotech, you can have a chance to make the biggest impact. And, you know, if even the company get bankrupt, or after 1 year or 2 years, you know, get dissolved or something, that's a very important experience you have already made. And, you know, the experience in industry is already something what many industry companies want to see on the CVs. So in the worst case, you can just, you know, improve your CV a lot and learn a lot. But I wouldn't be really afraid of small biotech companies at all.
Thanks a lot for your very inspiring answer, in my opinion, because what you experience, it's also an evidence that life is full of detours, just like, for example, your story with your PhD, where you initially wanted to go very securely close to your home in Vienna, and by accident, you know, you ended up in in Holland, but at the end you embraced the adventure and it led you to where you are. So this is a very inspiring thought that basically people should maybe be brave and just embrace the detour that happens along the way. So now we will move to the next question, which is from Pedro from CETEC. And he has a hypothetical question that I didn't understand fully. I hope you will. And it means if you would get an offer from CETEC to become a PI here, what would be the key points that would influence your decision to stay or leave your job? I understand it basically, it probably means what would we have to do to give you more to make the offer more attractive that you have currently in the industry you are working now, I guess. Maybe if Pedro wants to clarify in person what he meant.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly this. I just wanted to know what he would consider to take the decision.
I haven't heard of many cases of people leaving industry to go back to academia. And I'm afraid I won't be the one either. So I'm not really sure what a CETEC would have to offer that I leave the job I am at now, right now. In a way, you cannot, as a position which I have now, I have quite a big power of steering how the company is being, how it's developing, because pretty much as a CTO, you are responsible for the design, and you are responsible also for all the technology behind the product we are trying to develop. So that is a big responsibility, first of all, but second of all, it's also a very big opportunity and freedom of freedom of thinking and trying everything what you can think of, and that is also very much what I like. I'm not sure whether as a PI in CETEC I would get all the freedom that I can have, because I would pretty much be always in some kind of department context or something like that, I imagine, that I would need to move myself in. And so that's something what I would probably not like. But maybe I'm mistaken here.
Thanks a lot. As a spokesperson of CETEC, I will tell you we are not taking this personally. I understand that you don't want to chase grants anymore and you prefer to have your freedom and make a difference. So we will move to another question, which is from Violetta, and she would like to know, what is the chance to get a position applying spontaneously without existing job offer?
That's a good question, and that happens pretty much 50% of time at our company. So probably half of the people that we hired here, that we have with us, have applied, just by sending what in Germany is called Initiativbewerbung, or something that they just sent application without any opening being listed on a website. So I would definitely recommend it. How successful that is if you send it to a big pharma, I'm not really sure, because again, it will go through many kinds of filters, but it really works at the small and medium-sized companies.
Thanks a lot. Next question is also related to job hunting, and it is from Dimitri, and he would like to know, could you point out some platforms or aggregators where to look for jobs in the industry? I guess the best would be something Europe-wide, if you could recommend something.
Europe-wide, I'm not really sure, but what really works here, at least in Germany, is Job Vector, and I think this Job Vector has spins also in other countries in Europe. So and I also knew one Dutch website, but I forgot the name. It's I think it's an academic transfer .nl, which is also very useful website, at least for the Netherlands and Belgium. But I wouldn't know any others. Sorry about that.
Okay, we will maybe try to have a look and send to the people some tips after we have done our research. As an assistant from the project. And we have another very relevant question from Kezia. She would like to know how easy or difficult is to get a job in Germany without knowing German.
I don't think that's difficult. So because pretty much every paperwork that we do here and everything what we do still runs in English. And our company itself is very international, and so I don't see that as a barrier in any way. I think in most of the ads you can read that the German would be a plus or something like that. But even if you come without a German, I don't think that's a barrier. Definitely not with us. It wouldn't be a barrier. And you can always learn German as you go. I think that Germany has opened quite a lot in the recent times, and I don't think it's so essential to know German if you live in Germany. Definitely not in places like Heidelberg.
And Daniela has the next question.
Yeah, thank you. Rastislav, you mentioned in your presentation that in your lab there are always 2 or 3 students. They are industry PhDs, or it's just a short internships? It's a long stay or short stay? What is their position there in the lab?
So we don't have formal industry PhD at the moment. We had one which defended late last year. But those students which are staying with us are typically bachelor, so students which do their rotations in the bachelor. For example, they have 6 weeks rotation. And for example, Heidelberg University, some programs require that they do also rotation at industry. And, that was at one point quite some problem, because during Corona time, many industries closed their doors and they didn't want to accept anyone getting in just because of Corona, not because of not having places. But we always kept our doors open for anyone to, with the good skills and reasonable CV, and also for students to come in and to do their rotations. And, I think that's very important, because we all have been students ourselves, so we always keep the doors open. And we have typically 1 or 2 bachelor students per year. And we have also usually, which are shorter stays, up to 3 months. And this is often during the summer. And we have also master students here and in our company, usually 1, but if an exception, we also have 2, but usually 1. And when they are doing their master work, that typically takes, 4 to 6 months.
And what these students bring to your company? I hope it has to be a win-win situation. Some from the side of the student, he or she will learn something, and you will get, as a company, you will get some additional thing. What is it from the students? They are like cheap workers, or is there anything else?
No, because there's a lot of learning time that we invest into the students. So it's not that we are misusing them. It's, first of all, we in the lab invest a lot into training students. And usually, most of the time, but not always, but most of the time it pays off, because the students are also often staying with us. So usually one per year, at least, student stays with us on this minimal job basis. So then, that is extra money that the student can learn, and we are getting an extra help. For example, one day per week, the student is with us and work with us on the next projects. And so that's, as you say, win-win situation for both. And I think for everyone, if you're a student, I guess it's always nice to have some extra pay. And at the same time to learn something.
Super. Thank you very much.
So we will move to the very last question in the chat, because Uni's question was related to Kosice and it got answered already. So Pedro is asking, is it common to get ownership shares from small biotech companies, similar to how it happens in IT companies?
I don't know whether it's common, but we have one. We have this program here in our company, but I don't know how common that is.
Okay, thanks a lot. Since I do not see any questions in the chat and our time is almost up, I would like to ask the people who still have a question that you really want to ask, please raise your hand and ask the question now. And if you don't do so, I would like to thank you for your active participation, for all the questions you had. I had many questions prepared, but there was no time for it. But this is perfect, because this space was dedicated to you, to the students from our partner universities. And we are happy that this was useful for you. I hope it was. So I will now hand the word to Daniela, who will close this event for us.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you for your inspiring lectures, Rastislav. And I would like to thank Esther for her moderating. Before I say farewell, I would like to recommend you follow our SATEC website or social media, because we are already preparing another session of this Life After PhD. And we will be pleased if you fill out the questionnaire that I will send you afterwards by email. It will help us to improve this event in the future. Thank you. So thank you all. It was a lovely rest of the day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Bye, and good luck with your
Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.